Okay, so for this exercise, we're going to investigate how an if statement is coded. In particular, we're going to look at the if-then statement, the if-then-else statement, and nested if statements. I will try to do all of them in one application that will assign a letter grade based on the numerical grade that will be inputted during the runtime or while the program is running. So this is, again, a C program. Everything you're seeing here applies to C++, Java, C#, etc. I mean, this kind of control logic is universal in terms of if statements are concerned. So what is exactly an if statement? So let's look at it from a point of view of a flow chart. So we could see these three items in here visually. And then when I code it, we can map it to the visual aspect of what I'm going to do now. So let me go over here and start out with an if-then structure. So we're going to call this if-then statement. Okay. Okay. So we're familiar. First of all, let me go over here. Anytime you have a program, flowchart-wise, you have a start somewhere in here. You have some sort of an initialization and declaration of your variables. You may have inputs, outputs, etc., etc. And then at the end, your program will end right here. Okay, so somewhere in between, we may have some control flow like an if statement that will look like this, where we have branching. Either true, you go this way, false, you're going to go this way. Else, everything else is sequential. We go down this way, so following these flow lines. So if it's true, you're going to do certain things here. If it's false, you're going to do certain things here. Somehow you join here. We're going to put a terminal here. And then you might end up doing a few more things to the end. So we're going to focus right now on this part, okay? And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at a structure where we have an if-then statement, and that would look like this. So the first thing, you see this diamond shape, okay? That is with a question mark and a condition. Is we're interested in, is this condition or the result of this question, is it true or false? So if it's true, you're going to go one way. If it's false, you're going to go another way. This is what we call branching. Okay, so you're flowing into the program, you encounter this question, you're going to have to answer either to go this way or that way. So no matter what you do, let's say if it's true, you're going to process or do something like print, etc. So you could do a whole bunch of tasks over here as you're branching down the true branch. Now, for an if-then statement, if it's false, you do nothing. You simply continue on. So what does that mean? That means at the end of this if statement, okay, all branching meets up at this point. This is called a connector. And then you continue on with the rest of your program. So this will be the structure of an if-then statement. So the order these things are in, it all depends on your program. But the important part is that if it's false, the condition yields a false, you simply continue with your code or your program without doing anything, at least at this level. Okay? So this kind of like shorts or bypasses any of this, because any of this will be only executed if the condition was true. An if-then-else statement is different in the fact that in the false part, so you have a question mark here, again, condition, and a true, okay? So in the true, you might do a few things, right? In the false part, you will have few things to do as well. So unlike the if-then statement, which was a straight line, now you have some tasks to accomplish here. As much as you had some tasks, or a single task, on either side. Could be one task, could be multiple tasks. Okay? So if you encounter this condition, well, you will, and the answer will be, is it true or false in terms of that condition? If it is false, then you will go this way and you will accomplish these tasks and then go out of here and to the end of your program. If it's true, obviously, you're going to have to accomplish or complete these tasks. Now, you cannot do these two at the same time. So you're either going to be either the left or the right, either the true branch or the false branch. Okay, so that is the fundamental structure for an if statement, either be it an if-then or an if-then-else. Can we have an if within an if? Yeah, absolutely. So if, that's called nested if statement. So let's say your first condition is here. Well, you might have another question if it's true. Kind of a filtering process. And if it's true, you might have another question. If it's false, you might have another question. And it in itself, let's say this is an else with a print statement for false. You have another print statement here for false. Now notice how I'm going to, for true, right here. And notice how it must be consolidated in this manner. So notice here, if you have a false here, false, you have to join with connectors right there and out. So this is the outer if statement, inner if statement, inner, right? So you have to close that one before you close anyone else. And then you have to close this one, right? Or end the if before you close the main one you came in from. So this is going to be very important to pay attention to for our next drawing that I'm going to do based on the application. So I'm going to do a full-blown flowchart for the grading example that I was talking about. And let's see if we get it. So let me go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to save this. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do the grading application. All right. So we're going to do a start. And we're going to declare a variable that we're going to need. So float grade. You don't need to initialize it because you're going to have to ask the user to input a value for grade. So you might get an output statement that says out enter grade. Okay, so what I'm doing with flowcharts is I'm modeling what I would be coding eventually in my program. And this would be in. So what I'm doing is using standard flowcharting symbols. This would be grade for input and output. Now, at this stage, I have a value for grade. Okay, so what I'm going to do, since the program is going to be long, is I'm going to break it up. I'm going to put a connector here, right here, and continue with my code right here. Okay. Now, we know for typical grading on a scale of 0 to 100, one of the first things we want to make sure is that the grade is within a certain range. Okay, which means it has to be validated. So we could use an if statement for that. So, and for that if statement, we may use a combination of conditions, which means both have to be true for you to proceed. First, it has to be greater than 0. Second, greater or equal to 0, which is a valid grade, and less or equal to 100. Now you're in the correct range. Else, you could print an error. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask, the first thing I'm going to ask, and notice I'm going to make this a little big, is grade greater or equal to 0, and grade less or equal to 100? Question mark. Okay, so these two conditions have to be met for this to yield a true. And let's say the grade was negative. Well, it's true for grade being less than 100, but it's not true for grade greater than 0, since it's a negative value. Let's say your grade that you entered right here is 102. Well, it is indeed true that it is greater than 0, but it's not true as far as being less than 100. So all of this will yield a false. So if it's a false, I would like to print an error. So let me just go over here and simply print an error. Out. And then you could say error. And you could specify what it is, grade out of range. Okay? If it's not, then we have some work to do. So if it's not out of range, which means now that means the grade is greater than 0 and the grade is less than 100, then we need to ask the next question. Is grade greater or equal to 90? Right? Question mark. And if it's true, go ahead and print the letter grade A. So out the letter grade A. If it's false, then you have another question. You're going to have to evaluate, is grade greater or equal to 80? If it's true, then you will print right here, out, B. If it's false, then you nest your if statement again into another question. Is grade greater or equal to 70? Question mark. True. Go ahead and output. C. False. Continue on. And ask the next question. Is grade greater or equal to 60? Question mark. True. Go ahead and output. D. Else, false. Go ahead and output. F. Okay. Now we can close the inner loop, the inner if statement here, right here. Okay, that's the end of that if statement. Consolidate with this one. And then this would consolidate with this one right here. So notice the order. You start from the inside out. Then you're going to consolidate with this one. And finally, you will consolidate with your outer if statement. So here, and then we're going to end the program. Okay, so for the next part, what we will do is we will write the code based on this particular flowchart.